Welcome to the CCVO Capacity Building webinar series. I'm Tracy Braun, Manager Programs at CCVO. This series is focused on topics that will help nonprofit professionals and the organizations they work with build their capacity and strengthen their impact. Thank you to our sponsors, Land Solutions and Altitude Communications, for their support of the CCVO webinar series.
Land Solutions is really proud to help CCVO present these webinars as flexible learning opportunities for the nonprofit sector. As an IT solutions provider, Land Solutions offers small to medium-sized organizations the flexibility to work how they want, from wherever they want, by leveraging the power of the cloud. So sponsoring these webinars is a natural extension of our work.
We feel the same way at Altitude Communications. As a cloud provider of telephone and other communication services, we saw a direct link between the expert content of these webinars and really their intent, which is to promote productivity and efficiencies for their viewership. And we could link that back to our own passion for providing those same productivities and efficiencies through leveraging our own platform. So we're very happy to sponsor this programming.
This webinar is pre-recorded, but that doesn't mean you can't ask questions. We encourage you to add your questions to the chat window because we'll be sharing them with speakers for a follow-up blog post. You'll be able to find the link for the post and the recording of this webinar on our website after the release date. For this webinar on change management, we're joined by Jeff Skipper, CEO of Jeff Skipper Consulting. Jeff is an expert at accelerating change. Clients such as Suncor, Enbridge, the Salvation Army, and Bethany Care Society have engaged him to achieve dramatic results during strategic transformation by wrapping complex change in motivating mission. His first book will be published in 2020. Thanks for joining us, Jeff.
You're welcome. Thanks for that great introduction. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that has been really active for the last 5-10 years. And that's because organizations are rolling out more and more change and finding they don't always get the results that they're looking for. And when they look back on the reasons for that, one of the factors that seems to puzzle us time and time again is how do we really get people on board so they're really driving the change, not being dragged along behind it. So let's take a look at what we're going to cover. We've got 4 main learning points. First of all, how do we interpret these common reactions to strategic change and recognize why people are resisting? We're going to look at a simple method to diagnose perceptions, assess impact, and determine how much support to provide when we're rolling out one of these changes. We'll apply a 5-point early warning system to predict employee responses and then select our tactics so we can address potential issues in advance. And finally, we'll dig into some tactics that successful leaders are applying to really build anticipation and reframe some of that negative perception that comes up and really drive positive engagement. Let's begin with a picture you might have seen before. So even if you've not been to Spain, you probably recognize this is the running of the bulls. And it's a great metaphor for change. Let me give you a bit of the history. So the reason why they do this is hundreds of years ago, people who worked out in the country who were raising livestock would once a year bring all those animals into the city to sell them. And because they were a long way out, this was a major event. So they'd pack up the household, bring the whole family, and start moving this large herd of animals towards the city. And children, as children, get restless. And so they would look for ways to hurry things along. Can we excite these animals to get moving faster, give them a bit of push from behind? Can we get out front and kind of run ahead and see if we can get them to follow us? And as the herd moved along, they would dash in and out of the animals to demonstrate their courage, to be a hero. And as time went by over these hundreds of years, the city recognized this was such a significant event, we could build it into an entire festival. And why have just animals walking through the streets when you can set up barricades and get them really running and add some excitement and maybe race around them? And so they replicated some of that early sense of the children who are daring to run with the animals into the running of the bulls. So now let's use that as a metaphor for change, because when we roll out change, to many, it looks like we have these large, angry animals charging at us, and we need to do anything we can to stay ahead of them. So first we have our man in front, who, if you look closely, is not just running out of fear, he's actually enjoying this. He's smiling, and he's wearing red. Make me a target. So we have these folks in our organizations that, regardless of the change and the potential fear that it may drive, they want to be a part of it, and they want to be out front. They want to take advantage of all that change might have to offer for them. What else? Well, we've got folks who are not directly implicated by the change. They're not involved, but they know what's going on. They know how it's important for the organization, and they're cheering, they're encouraging. That's important because we find when we have that, the folks out front can run a little bit faster. It's like they've got a bit more capacity. Now we've got other folks who are participating, but maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed. So I'm not sure I can fully make it. I'm going to get out of the way, at least for a bit of time, until I can reset, get myself ready to get back in the race, which takes us to the next group, our support people. So they're there to help out as needed, do a bit of crowd control. And when folks are coming out of the way, to help them out, ensure they don't get injured, to give them some tips and help them when they're going to get back into the race. But what I'm most interested in is what's happening here in the back row. You've got 3 people standing back, and if you wanted to go and talk to them, you might have a conversation like this. Hey, how's it going? Oh, it's great. Great event. Looks like it's going well. Lots of people here. Yeah. You guys are pretty far back, though. Did you want to get a bit closer? No. We're good back here. Are you sure it doesn't look like you're really participating? No. We've got the T-shirts. We're good. And as you walk away, if you could hear them, they might say something like, that's going to be a train wreck down there. It's just a matter of time before something goes wrong. Resistance. So all these different roles exist when we're rolling out change, significant change for the organization. What do we do? Well, let's first understand what happens when we introduce a significant change. So here it is. First thing we do is we try and interpret that. How do we need to respond? And if you've done a bit of psychology, you've heard these 2 common types of responses, fight or flight. Now, neither of these are actually pictured in the photo we just looked at, because the folks who want to fight, they would have been active the days before the running of the bulls. They'd be out protesting. They'd have signs. This is a bad idea. They might have tried to set the bulls free the night before. Flight, when they launched those bulls into the street, the flight people would have run in the other direction. So they're not in the picture either. In our organizations, these types of responses are not that common. We don't have to see that. A bit in the United States, in companies like Google, Microsoft, we have employees that have signed petitions, have staged walkouts to protest what their organizations are doing. But we don't see a lot of that. That's more of an extreme case. Instead, we need to recognize that the most common thing, the most easiest thing for people to do in the face of change is nothing. They freeze. Now, we often interpret that as a form of resistance. They're not getting involved. They're standing back. But we need to break that down because there's a lot of reasons why people stand still and do nothing. So, yes, it could be that we don't like your change and we're just going to wait. So that's valid. That's some resistance. But more commonly, there's so much going on, they're feeling overwhelmed. They don't know what to do. They're afraid about their future. And so we get immobilized. And it's happened to all of us. Or we don't know what the change is yet. I'm not aware of what's going on. So, of course, I'm not going to take any action. Or I know what it is, but I don't know what it means for me. I'm not sure what I would need to do. So we do nothing. But there's a fourth category as well. we have to recognize that when change comes and it's difficult, we still have people who flourish. The guy out front wearing red, happy to be there. And in the work that I do, I aim to move as many people as possible from those three categories at the bottom to the top right. And there's lots we can do for that. So in working over 25 years in this area of leading change, implementing strategy for organizations, I've built a practice on using sound psychological principles that I've converted into tactics that leaders use today to help people get engaged during change. So these 5 levers, when applied well, increase the probability, because we never get everyone, but we increase the probability that people are going to migrate towards flourish. Now, why do I call it a strategy accelerator? Because you are not implementing change just for the sake of implementing change. No, you're doing it for a reason, and it's got to tie into the strategy of the organization. It must. Accelerator because every leader wants results, and the faster we can get them, the better. So when I'm working with leaders, it's always a matter of we need to implement this change, and the sooner we can get this in place, the better for us. The faster we can resume normal operations, the new normal. So we're going to dig into each of these 5 levers, 5 dimensions, but I want to emphasize it's not a linear model. You don't do them necessarily in order per se. We're going to use them like pieces that we can increase or decrease as required by the situation that we're dealing with. But we'll start at the top, clarity. Because as I mentioned, for me to start moving, flourishing, getting engaged, I really first need to understand what the change is. What is it? What is it you're trying to do? And what is it you need me to do? So what, and then who? Who needs to be involved? So what's typical for leaders is we talk in terms of stats. I'm doing work with an organization right now where we're trying to increase the access of individuals to food. So we know that almost 30% of our population in Canada has some issues with food security. It's not easy for them to get the food they require to have a decent, balanced diet for lots of reasons. So as we're rolling out this change where we want to really increase our capacity to meet that need, I could say to people, we got this gap. We've got 30% of people that are struggling to get the food they require. And that does stir something in me. Okay, well, that's not a good number. That's a lot of people. I want to fix that. But contrast that with me saying, many of you are aware of Daniel or someone like Daniel. He's been working for 40 years, 57 years old now, a variety of jobs, but nothing super steady. And that's meant the income has been up and down. And right now, because of an injury, he can't work. And he's the sole provider for a family. He's got 2 young boys, and they're in grade school. And they need to be fed. And once a week, Daniel takes 3 buses over to the food bank to pick up what he requires and has to try and lug home about 10 pounds of groceries. And really, that's not everything that he needs. We need to do something to help out Daniel. We need to ensure that those kids are able to get the food they need so they can focus in school. So contrast me saying 30%, at risk for food security versus the story of Daniel. And we recognize that stories overrule data every time because they produce an emotional impact. And when we're rolling out change, we're rolling out a strategy, we need to be able to tell the story of what we're trying to accomplish. So when I'm working with leaders, we come up with narratives that describe what that future state looks like and why it's going to be important for our clients and how employees are going to be involved. So there's 3 particular parts that I emphasize when working with my clients. First is help. You may have heard this phrase, WIFM. What's in it for me? So we've been taught that we need to speak to the benefits to the individual because, again, that tuned brain we have to pick up on things that might be a threat is trying to assess whether this is going to be bad. But the flip side of that is this change in fact providing me with a survival opportunity? So if it's giving me more job security, it's increasing my finances, if it's making my life easier in some way, I'm going to tune into that. I'm going to want to participate. So we start with self-interest. How does this change help the individual? Whether it's our employees or our volunteers or clients. But second, we go to heart. Let me tell you about a study that was done earlier this year with millennials in Canada. It asked them, would you be willing to change jobs for another role that offered more purpose? And half of them said yes. Now, that may seem like an obvious response, but consider the fact when you change jobs, that is a major life change. You're giving up relationships that you've established. You might be giving up influence that you have within the workplace to go somewhere else and start at a role where you're not sure exactly if that's going to work out. But we'll do that if it offers more purpose, meaning we're doing something for mankind that lines up with my value set. Now, in case they were just responding because it's socially acceptable to say that you would change jobs to achieve more purpose, they asked them, let's say that your current employer got wind of the fact that you are going to be changing jobs and offered you a raise. How much of a raise would you be willing to forego to still go to that other job to achieve more purpose? An amazing result was that on average, they would give up $9,000. Consider the implications of that. People are willing to forego help, practical assistance, cash in my pocket in order to get more meaning, more purpose. But we can go further. To what degree does your change offer hope? Does it describe or help facilitate a future that's better, either for me or for my clients, my community, my country? So even though it might not give me something in the near term, I might have to wait 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. I'm willing to participate, get involved because I see that there's hope at the end of that journey. As you roll out a change, people respond to it. So they might have bought in right away, they're excited, or maybe not. So you want to tune into the OBF, the office buzz factor. So you've got open space, or you've got a kitchen area, break room where people meet up. What's the level of chatter like? Because if it's increasing, that could mean one of many things, and you need to find out. Are they excited about the weekend coming up, sharing what they're going to be doing? Or are they excited about your change? You see all the positives of that? Or, I have to say more commonly, they're asking questions they're concerned about as a result of your change. Because we never get all the answers we want out of that initial announcement, that launch, that narrative that comes with it. And so you want to tap into that, because when the OBF rises, if it's negative and people are asking questions and not getting answers, they can start making up the answers in a drive to figure out and to introduce predictability to their future. So what do? Well, you sit down with one of them, trying to create some comfort around that. Say, I've noticed that there's a lot of chatter going on in the office, and I was wondering, what do you think is on people's minds? Now, this is worded specifically, because if I say, what is on your mind, and a person is feeling threatened about your change, they may be very reluctant to tell you what they're thinking, because it might make them a target. I don't want to bring bad news, that people are really concerned or they're thinking about leaving. So instead, I say, what do you think is on people's minds? Because now the other person can tell you what they think other people are thinking, and in so doing, introduce what's on their mind as well, without it necessarily coming from them. So the response might be, it's a good question. From what I'm hearing folks have some real concerns about whether there's going to be some layoffs involved in this change. Now, once you've got that type of feedback, well, what do? Well, you got two options. One is fill in the blanks. If you've got information, share it. So provide the answers as much as you can, but it's likely, especially at early stages, you don't have all the answers. So instead, you're going to say, I don't know. But do not stop there. Finish it with, here's when I can provide an update. So we recognize you don't have all the answers, but by giving them a timeline in which you'll respond and start filling in the blanks, that introduces some control to the individual. So consider, when a change is difficult, is challenging, is daunting, it feels like my world is getting out of control. That's extremely stressful. It will increase the chances people are going to resist. But if you can say, here's when the answers are coming, you're introducing control because I can count on some dates you've given me, some milestones when answers are coming. That gives a sense of control. And in fact, whether you're responding to a question or not, for every change coming up, you want to create a regular cadence of communications, updates to your team, so they know what's happening. So whether that's a weekly email, a newsletter that goes out, a huddle for the team to get together, and even if sometimes the answer is there's nothing new to report, that regular sequence of updates, connections, fosters a sense of control. It adds structure to what feels like chaos. Very important tactic. So to introduce clarity around the change, tell a story, connect it to people, and then repeat. Don't only say it once. Now, what about capacity? I was doing work for an organization, and we were rolling out a new software system for accounting. So like many organizations, they'd been using Excel for a lot of stuff for a long period of time. So it was great. It had a lot of advantages for them. And we set up a communication cadence, so to add clarity. And we told them about the fact, here are all the features that are going to be included with it. And we did spotlights on specific parts of the program to get them familiar. So over the course of months and then weeks, we're giving them regular updates and told them the training is coming. We're not going to leave you alone. We're going to support you. So there's going to be training. It'll take 1 day or 2 days, depending on your role. Here's some of the content it will include. And then as we got closer to it, we said registration is coming. And then finally, registration is open. And we watched the numbers very carefully, and we saw that a lot of people registered at the beginning. And then it dropped off rapidly. Oh, that's not good. So we went to the managers and said, can you give this a push? And they did. And we saw registrations go up again and drop quickly. We're not getting the numbers that we require because they had a fairly big finance department. And remember, they couldn't learn this software on their own. It wasn't something you could just pick up on the job. There's some complexity to it. So we went out and decided we got to figure out what the issue here is, because we're starting training, and not only do we have low registration, but some people aren't even showing up. So you can interpret that as resistance. I don't like this change. I think your training sounds stupid. I don't think your trainers are going to be any good. Who knows? But you could interpret this as pushback by your employees. When we dug into it, here's what we found. Their organization, like many of yours, runs extremely thin. There isn't a lot of slack. So when we say training is going to take a day or 2 days, they think that means I'm going to have to make up the time on my evenings and my weekends. So the change and the support you're providing that you saw as positive, we're providing you with skills and what you're going to need to be successful, is actually a negative for them. It produces a negative consequence. You're taking away from my personal time, from time with my family. But there's a second piece as well. We didn't build completion of the training into their performance plan for the year. It wasn't an expectation. So if they look at how they're rewarded, they see my manager is going to recognize me for completing my regular work on time as I always do. Whereas if I take this training, I don't get rewarded for that at all necessarily. So what are you going to choose? So we had to create capacity because as it stood, they did not have the capacity to go take training for a number of reasons. So there are two ways to increase capacity. One is very practical. Look around the organization. Are there folks who are a little less utilized that we could bring to bear to help out for a period of time? Could we bring in temporary resources to assist? Are there tools that might help things go a bit faster? Can we delegate some of the easier tasks these folks have to someone else for a time? So practical ways that we can add capacity, and that will help. We can also shift the perception of capacity. So consider, if I said to you, can you go lift up that car? You would say no. But if I said, there's a child trapped under that car, can you lift it? You're going to go for it. And we've heard of stories where people have actually done it. Is anything different about your muscles between the two scenarios? No. But the motivation is different. And so we can stress to people, here are the benefits of completing this or carrying through the change or fighting through what's a difficult period of time. We can remind them of the strengths they have they may not recognize that they can bring to bear to help them get through this. We can remind them of their history and how they've been successful before and greatly change how they see themselves and their ability to make this work. We have to be cognizant of what's happening within media as well. This is a headline that came out in the Financial Post. Most people don't like change. And just this week, someone posted this who works from the same area I do. Change is hard. And we're bombarded with these messages. And you can think about the fact that it has a big difference if I go into a change with that mindset of change is hard, it's painful, it's going to be difficult, it will be a struggle, versus the fact that we're incredibly good at this stuff. In fact, we're adapting all of the time. Before you started this webinar, I guarantee you have adapted in some way to many, many different situations and not even thought about it. Remember, our brain is tuned in to detect differences, detect changes, and respond. That's why when we have a detour in front of us, we don't just pull over to the side of the road and stop. We don't put ourselves into a ball. We instead navigate. We take a right, we take a left as needed. We use our GPS to figure out another route to get where we need to go. And we carry on. So we're adapting all of the time. And in fact, the message we need to be telling our employees or volunteers that we are uniquely well suited for change. Yes, some change is hard. Yes, this change will produce some pain. But you have a fantastic capacity to adapt, to move through, and on the other side, it's going to be so much better. So to increase capacity, we've got to work on that mindset as well. Continuity. When we're considering our change, we want to evaluate exactly what is changing and what is not. So we'll start by looking at what is changing and how people will respond to that. So there are two dimensions to make this really simple. Anyone can do this. We can check in with employees and see, for the changes we're rolling out, is this desirable? Now, we started here with that initial threat assessment that our brains do to determine, is this going to be a threat? We're basically doing a thumbs up, thumbs down. Is this good for me or bad for me? And we have these elements that we can tap into or utilize to sway the perception of desirability. Does it offer help? Does it appeal to the heart? Does it give us hope? The other part is complexity. I describe it like this. So you're running a hot dog stand and you're on the corner, and the CEO of Hot Dogs Incorporated comes to you and says, you know what, we need you to move. You're going to have to take your cart from this street to that street over there. And you look where he's pointing, and you can see it, and you're like, oh, well, I've walked by there. I can do that. I see there are a number of people between me and there walking down the sidewalk, but I can navigate that. My hot dog stand is on rollers, so it shouldn't be a problem. Low complexity. But if you tell me, we're going to need you to move your hot dog stand to the corner of 6th and 7th on the other side of downtown. Well, now I'm thinking about it, going, well, I'm going to finish out the day here. That means that I'll be moving my cart at evening, a little more risky. And there's all these one-way streets, so uh, I could get confused and end up in the wrong place. And I can't recall even ever being on that corner before. I wonder if there's even any decent traffic there so I can sell my hot dogs. So complexity is about looking down the road to the destination and determining what are all the obstacles in the way that could make it difficult for me to get there or even derail me from the journey. Obstacles look like this. Relational. If you're changing who reports to who, if some people are going away, I don't know what it looks like after that. I mean, I've been working with these people a long time. I love working with them. The dynamics are going to change, and that might impact my ability to be successful on the job. Technical change, so whether it's software or I'm having to learn new skills that I've not done before, all those offer an opportunity for me to fail, to get things wrong, make mistakes, and particularly if that happens in front of other people, I'm going to be much more hesitant to engage your change and more likely to resist. Procedure change, regulatory change comes in, and now we have to do 10, 15 extra steps to our procedure. It's going to take longer. Power and control, whether I'm going to have more of it or less of it, has an impact on whether I assess I can be successful through this change. And my emotional state. So if this is a particularly down day, or I've been dealing with aging parents who need extra care, I have less emotional strength to bring to a change because it requires some. And when we're distracted or we're upset, it's just more difficult to focus and navigate. All those things add complexity. Now we can work our way around the quadrants. So first of all, if it's something that is not desirable, there's low complexity, I'm going to encourage you to embrace this because we need to. It's being put in place for the good of our employees, our volunteers, our clients. But if folks are not embracing the change, I'm going to mandate it at some point. So listen, I really need you to do this. But if you're not going to comply, it's going to become a performance discussion. What about something with low complexity, high desirability? Well, that's the holy grail. We love that one. I always think about cell phones. People are willing to line up for new cell phones, and none of them come with a manual anymore. People figure them out. But if they need help, if they get stuck, what do? Typically, they go to YouTube, watch a video, and sort it out. So the help is there available. If they need it, they can go get it. What about something that's more complex now? So Samantha receives a promotion. Now, that has lots of goodness with it, highly desirable. Going to have more influence, maybe a boost in pay, going to be rubbing shoulders with some folks I wanted to be working with. But there's risk here. If Samantha doesn't adapt very well to managing new people, maybe her team starts to revolt or their performance decreases. So instead, proactively, I'm going to tell Samantha, we've signed you up for a course in leadership, 101. Next week, it's going to be 2 days. And the executive director is going to meet with you periodically over the next 3 months, probably once every 2 weeks, to ensure if you've got issues, questions that come up, you've got some help. So I'm proactively providing assistance to ensure they're going to be successful. We call that setting them up for success. But the toughest one, we've got high complexity, low desirability. So again, I've looked towards that future and I'm having difficulty envisioning myself being successful. This is not something I really want to be involved in. For those situations, we want to reduce the change and reframe it. Now, it's not an advertisement for recycling. There's some real practicality in this, and we're going to use someone else to help us illustrate it. Our friends at Ikea. Now, you may have had various experiences building furniture from Ikea. I certainly have. But let me explain how this tells us how we can set up change. So my son calls me and says, Dad, I need a new desk. I've gone and picked one out at Ikea. I'll buy it. Can you come pick me up? I say, yes, sure. I knew you needed one. I'll be right there. And we load it into the SUV and bring it home, take it down to the basement, unpack all the boxes. So now we've got all these parts in front of us. And I swear, every time Ikea creates a new product, they reinvent the connection pieces. It's always something new. Now, if I only have the picture in the top left corner, I look at that and I look at my parts and say, I'm not sure how I'm going to get there, particularly for a desk. Now, bookcase, maybe. But if I build it without any of the other instructions, it's likely when I put a book on it, it's just going to collapse. It might be a reasonable facsimile of what they want me to build, but it's not likely to be very effective. So it's a complex task I need to do. It's going through a complex change. So what does IKEA do? They break it down into pieces. They reduce it. Step one, Jeff Skipper, can you go find these 4 pieces of wood and these small spindly things? And I think, yes, I know what dowels are. I can press them in with my fingers and maybe a light tap with a hammer and I'm good to go. Step 2, can you get these long pieces of wood and insert 6 screws in each? Well, yes, I can see from the picture, I've got enough detail here that I can sort that out and get it done. And on we go through steps 3 to whatever till it's done. So I've taken a complex change, building a bookcase, because I'm not very good at that stuff, broken it down into parts where I can look at each one and determine I can be successful doing it. So I've reduced it, and by doing so, I can reframe it with skills that I know. I know how to use a screwdriver. I know how to use a hammer. I know how to find parts. Reframe. Thank you, IKEA. So we assess what the change is going to mean. We can break it down, but that's where leaders often stop. And so I remind them, it's great to be clear about what the change is and all that's going on and making that clear for people. But when it's so much, we also need to emphasize what is not changing. Continuity. So if it's a major change for the organization, then I'm going to talk about things like our executive director is not going. Okay, you're still working for the same person. The mission of the organization is unchanged. What you signed up for to do, to accomplish, that's still what we're trying to do here. Our values are still the same values that have made us successful, made it a great place to work, and so on. I'll look for other things that show continuity so that even when it feels like it's the storm raging around me, I've got these anchors that I can hold on to that are not going to move during the change. Credibility. Why is this important? Because if you're clear about your message, if you've done things to generate capacity, if you've emphasized what is and what is not changing, but I don't believe in you or I don't believe in your change, I'm going to be one of those people who stands back and crosses their arms. So what do we do about that? Well, credibility is not fixed. There are 3 things that you can do. First of all, if you look at big organizations, they might bring in a celebrity to say, this is a good product. This is good for you. Now, it's unlikely we're going to do that, so we're going to move quickly on from that. Thank you, Taylor Swift. What I most commonly do with organizations is help them borrow credibility. So if they're not sure about the leader's past, who's going to be leading the change, we go through that and see, are there things that you've accomplished in the past successfully we can highlight for people? Did you know that Samantha has actually worked on 5 similar projects in the past, or 5 major changes, and those have come through successfully? That will shift perception, enhances credibility. What about peers? So if it's someone at the top, perhaps having the board come alongside and say, we've looked at the plan, it looks sound. If there's other executive directors that might come alongside and say, we've been through a similar change, you can do it. But there's another way to leverage your peers. I was doing work with the Salvation Army, and we were rolling out a major new piece of software in HR and payroll. And it was going to bring capabilities they'd never had before to the organization. Managers would get access to things they hadn't had, major benefits. But they're uncertain because this is all so unfamiliar. So as we were working on clarity and rolling out the message, I said we need to include a few specific points. Now, footnote here, keep in mind, the Salvation Army still maintains a strong heritage in brass banding. Okay, it's part of their churches. You may see them march in parades from time to time. So with that in mind, we're rolling out our messaging. We're talking about the change, what's going to be included in that, what the benefits are. And during that conversation, I say this. Now, many of you, even in the past couple of weeks, have had a delicious Subway sandwich. Did you know that Subway subs also implemented the same software successfully? Oh. Many of you have also shopped at Winners, TJ Maxx in the States. That entire organization has implemented the same software, successful. And finally, Yamaha, makers of fine brass instruments, have implemented the software. And I tell you, that last one resonated the most. So did my saying that change the ability of our project to be successful? Well, saying those words doesn't do anything per se, but the perception of the individuals can shift. It adds credibility. Well, we respect those organizations, or we respect those other individuals that are talking about this change. So if they can do it, if they've done it, then I guess we can too. The final way to build credibility, which has to be ongoing, everybody can do this, is in how you present, how you deliver information about the change in a professional, clear way, with confidence. And then also presence, meaning you don't just leave it at the formal presentations or the huddles. You follow up on that with people, or you listen when they respond. If they raise objections, we don't immediately shoot that down. We listen, we acknowledge it. We may have to contradict it, but we demonstrate that we're not turning a blind eye to it. And if possible, we'll take action as a result, and that builds credibility. So we're now going to move on to our last component, support. So we're going to go back to our friends at Ikea, because there's something more we can take away from this image on the screen. Let me blow that up for you. So first it starts by saying, here are the tools you're going to require to construct this item. Got a couple screwdrivers, pencil, hammer. Check, I've got all those. I can go get them. This is a reference to capacity. Yes, I've got those skills, I've got those items. That's part of my success. Check. The next frame, with an X through an individual, seems to be indicating that to be successful, I need to find another individual with oddly shaped elbows and a pencil behind their ear. Now, I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it does tell me two people are better than one. So to the extent I can get support from other people to help me build this, I will be happier and more successful. And the final frame at the bottom says, if I run into a challenge, here's where I can go for help. But there's one other piece that's not pictured here, but comes with every IKEA product. You might have a bag or a bucket of these in your house, just like I do, and that's the Allen key. So there are elements of this construction that perhaps you can't do with the toolkit you've got, with the skill set you've got. Not to worry, we're going to fill in the blanks. So for support, we recognize that it's not easy to go through change by ourselves, particularly if it's complex and undesirable. So we want to ensure we've got people equipped to provide support. So I'm often working with organizations to say, how are you going to get people to line up at the middle layer of the organization if it's big? Or we have key individuals that are tapped in with our volunteers, with our employees, that can listen for issues and provide support. They're the people who, when they're asked questions, they might say, I don't know, but they're also able to say, but here's when we're going to have an update. They know what's happening. They can help fill in the blanks. We provide a clear path to help. So if you do run into a challenge that you can't solve, here's where you're going to go. Maybe it's to your local manager, maybe it's right to the executive director, but there is a place you can go. That door is open. Knowing that, again, fosters a sense of control. And then I've added safe spaces to fail, and that's often the role of training. So as we're learning things, we get an opportunity to practice it, and we may make some errors, and that's normal. It's during training, it's not going to hurt anything. But it doesn't stop there. That safe space to fail needs to exist in the live work environment as well. Because no change is perfect. People make mistakes. We sometimes say the wrong things to our clients. We do the wrong things with our systems. We make errors. And if we can find a way to share those mistakes with everyone else without embarrassing people, then they realize, okay, I can drop the level of nervousness. I can carry on. I know there will be errors. And when there are errors, it's okay to tell my boss that, tell the managers that, so we can fix it. So now, as we're kind of looping back around the top of the accelerator, I have two aspects of clarity. Here's the future. Here's where we're going. Here's how you're going to be involved. And I'm also communicating, here's some of the mistakes that are being made. It's okay. We're still going to get there. We're making progress. Both are important aspects of communication. So when I work with teams and organizations, we use this in two ways. At the outset of a change, we use it to determine where we're likely to run into some issues, some potential resistance, where folks may have some concerns, and we'll plan our change, our tactics by using that, leveraging everything that I've shared with you today and picking off the tactics that are going to work best. We also use it midterm for a change. So as we're moving through, are we really getting the uptake we want? Are folks getting engaged? Are we seeing those results? And if not, where are some of the gaps? Because doing that, now I can determine, do I need to up the level of work in one of these areas? Or can I leverage something else more strongly to compensate for it? And I'll give you a clue. It's often in the support area where I can really ramp that up to overcome some of the other issues. So maybe you've got some challenges around the complexity of the change, or you're feeling like you just don't have enough capacity. Well, then let's double up on support and help you build the skills that you require or give you the extra assistance you need. I love to work out. When I'm traveling, I can't get to the gym, but I'll shoot these little videos and share them of me doing push-ups because that's one of my favorite things. But when I'm home, I do go to the gym. And I like to attend these boot camps. And so one day I go in and Ryan says, we've got 3 exercises for you guys today. You can't go on to the second one until you finish the first. And the first one is 200 push-ups. 200 push-ups? All right, well, I like push-ups. Let's see. I've never done 200. Off we go. So I get down and I'm starting to do them. And I get up to 70, 80. And Ryan comes by and I say, Ryan, I don't know, man. I'm getting pretty tired. So I'm not sure I'm going to make it 200. Yes, you can. You will. Keep going. All right. Now what we do, I didn't realize it at the time, but we start reducing. So you don't do 200 all in a row. You do them in sets. So from 80, I might do another 18 and then take a break. And then 16. And then a pair of 15s, take breaks. Then 12s and 10s and 8s. And by the time I get to 200, I think the last set was just 2, where you're so exhausted. But I made it. Now, if Ryan had called me at home that morning and said, Jeff, we got 3 exercises, have to do them in order. First one is 200 push-ups, go. And I hung up and started. When I got to 80, that point of, I'm not sure I'm going to make it, I probably would have pushed through to 100, felt good about that, and quit. When I'm at the gym, Ryan's there to help me out. How does he do that? He encourages me. He reminds me I've been doing push-ups for a long time. People know you as the push-up guy. And I can look to the right and see that there's folks who are doing it. Wow, that's incredible. It's motivating. Okay, I want to keep going. And I can look to the left and see there's people with terrible form. They're failing to some degree, but they're still hanging in there. So I'm going to keep going for them too. My point is, the remedy for resistance is resilience. So we build up this capability in ourselves to bounce back quickly from issues, from challenges to keep on going. And the key factor for driving resilience is leadership. To the extent that my leader encourages, reminds me of strengths, to the extent that they direct my attention to others who are succeeding, to the extent that they demonstrate, hey, some failure occurs and it's okay, they are raising my level of resilience. And that is our role in leading change. So to sum up, when you're launching a major initiative, major change, new strategy, we want to offer that with clarity. Put our employees or volunteers into the story, our clients. Demonstrate how it offers help, heart, and hope. Ensure we're providing a way to build capacity. So reinforce what they've done successfully in the past, where their strengths are, and tell them not only what is changing, but what is not. Give them those anchors. Credibility, you can build it. Utilize your past, leverage your peers, make good presentations, and then be present. Tap into what people are saying, thinking, and respond. And finally, offer great support. Enlist the role of your managers or others within your organization, not just as people who relay messages, but can really help people navigate change and make failure safe. And in doing so, by applying these levers, all part of the accelerator, we can move through our changes much more quickly and achieve the results that we're looking for. Now that wraps up the content I've got for you, but if you would like, I publish a weekly newsletter that is always having something fresh, some new thinking, new model. I've got tools that I put out and videos, and you're welcome to join. I set up a specific page for CCVO, and you can see the address there. If you'd like to register, please do that. Of course, there's a download that's come along with this presentation. I encourage you to pull that as well. And now with that, I'm going to turn it back to Tracy.
Thank you, Jeff, for sharing your expertise with us. I look forward to reading your thoughts on the follow-up blog post. Thank you as well to our sponsors, Land Solutions and Altitude Communications, to the CCVO team who worked behind the scenes to produce this webinar, and to you, the audience, for spending this time with us. All the best until next time.